You want to sit there? Yeah, okay. Yes, sir.
Well, we're here.
Yeah. Oh, now what?
Well,
Are we finished?
no, yes. Thank you so much.
I thought it went very well. Thank you.
Well, Terry doesn't need introduction, but I'm going to start with when I was growing up, my neighbors, my parents, I was dropping out of school, I left, I ran away from home, I jumped out of the window, I got on the train, I went to London, and I started my life, and I actually went to Moscow to do a festival, which led to another festival, and then eventually we met in Istanbul about 10 years ago. But my parents were always pressuring me and telling me, oh my gosh, if you're not gonna go to university, get an education, you're gonna be swiping the streets. What would you tell my younger self?
Luckily, you didn't listen to your parents, did you?
No.
You didn't. Good.
But what would you tell the ones that are going to school and take filmmaking seriously?
I didn't take filmmaking. I never took a filmmaking course. I just learned by making films. But I think if you're going to make films, you need a good education. You've got to be intelligent. You've got to understand the world so you have something to say. It's not just about entertainment. But I forgot to say добрий день.
Making films can take years. And do you think sometimes after 5 years you're talking about the project and you still haven't made it? Did it ever make you feel stupid or a failure that is still not happening? How do you find the persistence to?
I think persistence, you have to be stupid. And on one hand, I'm quite smart, but I'm very stupid. And once an idea captures me, I basically am a prisoner of that idea. And hello. Shall I say all of those words again? No. Anyway, so once I become obsessed, I really have to finish whatever it was I was trying to do. And that's all it is. And luckily, I'm a very lucky filmmaker because I have another source of income. I'm not a carpenter, I'm not a plumber, I'm not an electrician, which are important jobs, and you should, if you want to be a filmmaker, become one of those also. But I was lucky to be in Monty Python, and the success of that has allowed money to keep trickling in. So between films, I still am making a little bit of money, which allows me the freedom to decide what I want to do and only do things that I want to do.
Was there ever a moment where in the process of years and years developing a project, you thought that, thank God I waited this long because now the project is as it should be?
No, I think most of the time I'm depressed. That's why I come to film festivals, so people remember that I did something good or bad. But most of the time I am depressed. I find I will never work again, I think. And it goes on and on. But then you succeed and you do something. You make a film and that carries you for several more years, thinking life is worth living.
I think for a lot of people in the world, they think that winning an Oscar is really the top of the ladder. And they think that this is it, if I'm gonna get there, and they watch the award ceremonies and they think that's where I wanna get to. How do you value awards yourself?
They're good for keeping doors open. You stop at and the door doesn't close every time you go through. They're very useful. They're sometimes good for keeping the papers from blowing away when I'm working outside. They're very useful for things like that. I don't really have any interest in awards, and I know I'm never going to get an Oscar, and it doesn't bother me in the least. I think the problem is those who want Oscars, those who want that kind of recognition, are career people, people who, this is my career, I must get to the top. I don't have a career. I never had a career. I do one thing after another thing. Each thing is the only thing that's important to me. Each film I do is the only film I will ever be able to do. And that's the way I think. And I think awards are like being back in school when you get a gold star for being clever. And I thought that was long ago, so awards don't interest me. But it's nice when I come and see all of you sitting here, and I realize these people don't hate what I do for a living.
But, okay, so eventually, awards or no awards, eventually when you get recognition and you get success, does that impact your creativity? Does that create an expectation?
Nope. No, awards are of no use, really, except to come and meet people that like you. The only thing that keeps you going is to make films that don't lose too much money. And then you can get money from, because the whole business of making films, they're very expensive. My life was better when I was just a cartoonist. All I needed was a piece of paper and a pen. That doesn't cost anything. It's my time. Films are expensive things to make, and so you have to go around. You need other people who you can fool into thinking you're going to make money for them. And then when you fail, then you've got to find another fool.
But let's say when you become, let's say, a hot Hollywood, a hot filmmaker at the time, does that have an impact on your creative process?
What happens, because I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, just over the hill from Hollywood. I always loved movies. I loved the idea of making movies, but I didn't understand how you got over the hill. And then I left America and ended up in England, and eventually Monty Python formed, and eventually we became successful. And the first film we made in America was a complete disaster. It didn't work. But then I decided I wanted to make Time Bandits. And we had actually started a company with George Harrison, who rescued Monty Python's Life of Brian, because the studio in England, we were on our way to Tunisia in Tunisia to start shooting. And I arrived on the Thursday, and I think on the Friday, the studio pulled the plug, said no. And so we were without a movie, even though we had a crew, everything was done. And luckily, we knew one Beatle, and that made our life possible. And George Harrison was a big Monty Python fan, and mortgaged his house to provide the money so we could make Monty Python's Life of Brian. And then we started a company called Handmade Films, and we started making more films. And I came up with the idea of Time Bandits. Now, Michael Palin and I wrote a script. We finished. We thought it was rather good. We sent it out to Hollywood. Every studio turned the script down. George Harrison said, we're going to put money in. We made the film. The finished film we sent to Hollywood. Every studio turned the finished film down. And we ended up going to the smallest of the sort of major distributors, company called Avco Embassy. And they hadn't had a hit for 10 years, but they had the machinery of distribution. And they took it. And again, George Harrison put up the money for the advertising of the film. And the film opened in America, and it was #1 for 5 weeks. And it was like an explosion. The studios... And the studios want to know, who is this guy who did this? Because they knew nothing about us. They knew nothing about the film, and suddenly I was hot, very hot. And that lasted for a few years. I'm not hot now. When you're hot, all the studios want you. You're like a magic person, like you're a golden talisman, and they want to touch you. They want to give you money. It doesn't matter. And I remember after Time Bandits, I was offered one of the biggest films that one of the big studios wanted to make. Huge budget, everything. And I thought it was a really dumb film. I thought it was, and normally what happens for people when they succeed, their first success in Hollywood, they grab the next projects, because that's an intelligent thing to do. I, again, was being stupid, but I said, no, I don't want to do this. And what happened was because I turned the studio down on this very big budget A-list film, it made me even more interesting to the studios because they couldn't buy me. And we ended up going and raising the money to make Brazil. And Brazil got made despite nobody wanting it to be made.
Going back to Monty Python's, how did you all find each other?
No, it was in, I think, a public bath. We were... No, it was... well, I have to do my side of the story, I guess. So I was working in New York. I was co-editing a magazine called Help. And in the magazine, we did things called fumetti, which are like a comic strip where people talk in the bubbles of a fumetto, little smoke. But rather than cartoons, we did photographs. So we hired actors, and it was like shooting a movie. You needed locations, you needed costumes, you needed actors, but they were still photographs. And we had written a story about a man who falls in love with his daughter's Barbie doll. I think he even consummates the affair somehow. And there was a group of British comedians in New York playing in the Village. And it was called Cambridge Circus. And there were two people in there that were interesting. One was Graham Chapman, and the other was John Cleese. And I got John Cleese to be in our fumetti, and he and I became friends. And then 2 years later, I left America and came to England. And John, by then, had become very popular on television. And I was still cartooning and editing magazines, art directing. And I said, John, introduce me to somebody in television. I want to get out of magazines. And he introduced me to a producer who liked my drawings, and I was able to sell him a couple of my little written sketches, my scripts. And he was producing a children's comedy show with Mike Palin, Terry Jones, and Eric Idle, two Pythons. And also, I don't know if you know the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, but they were on the show. And they were wonderful, surreal musicians, beautiful, wonderful. And anyway, I did some work on that children's show, and then around the second series, we met up with John Cleese and Graham Chapman and said, let's work together. So there were 6 of us, and that was Monty Python. Very simple. You just have to go through a few different continents before you get together.
Well, I'm sure all your films are like children to you. Who is your favorite child? Who is your favorite child?
My favorite child. Oh, my child?
Out of the film.
All of my children. I have 3 children. Only one of them is here today. So at the moment, she is my favorite child. Tomorrow may be another day.
No, but speaking of the films, do you
those children, my film?
Yes.
Not my real children.
Yes.
No. Films. I don't know. I don't want to choose them. It's like choosing which is my favorite child.
Yes.
So I don't like doing it. And what film are we got today? We got Don Quixote. So clearly that's my favorite child today.
The child of the day. How did the name Handmade Films? How did the name Handmade Films came about?
Well, the idea, I think it was George Harrison's idea. It was originally British handmade films. We just like this authentic handmade film where people really are involved in the making of the product. And unfortunately, the organization in England who controls who gets to call something British didn't allow us to use the name, so it simply became handmade films. I like the idea that we're not artists, we're artisans, really. We make things with our hands.
I think life is a big source of inspiration. How do you put that into action?
I mean, I don't actually understand the process of making films. Let's be honest today. These are magical things that just come into my life and they happen. And I happen to be at the right place at the right time. Basically, I think I'm very reactive to the world. All the things I don't like in the world, I try to incorporate into my films. That's what it's about. It's a way, I mean, for the first few years in England making movies, I said there were messages in a bottle for America. They're always about America. And it's still the same way. I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, okay, books come along, like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. That was a book that was very important to me. And to get a chance to make a film of it was fantastic. Baron Munchausen, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, is more interesting because Baron Munchausen, as a character, and the books written by Eric Raspe in the 19th century, or 18th, whatever year, in the 1950s, it was the second most popular book on the planet. Only the Bible was more popular. That's true. And it's all been forgotten. Baron Munchausen was forgotten. And so I like those stories. And I thought, let's see if we can make a film and bring the book back to life and reintroduce people to Baron Munchausen. And that's what we did. So I don't have a plan ever. I just react to something or something comes along. Or somebody, in the case of The Fisher King, which I think was the happiest film I made. I had just finished Baron Munchausen, and that had been a very complex and difficult experience. But the film, I'm delighted with the film. And Hollywood, for whatever reason, offered me this script. The real reason, I think, was Robin Williams had been in Baron Munchausen, and we were friends. And they wanted Robin in the film, and I was the bait. I was the worm on the hook, on the end of the fishing line, is what it was. And the script arrived, and I was always getting scripts and always turning them down because I just didn't respond to them. I didn't like them, or I thought they were too difficult. And the first few pages of the script, I thought, this is brilliant. I understand these characters. I think that the writing is fantastic. And I said yes. And before that, I had always swore I would never make a Hollywood movie, a studio movie from Hollywood. I said never, never. And so I thought, since I've said that for so many years, let's do it. If I'm going to make rules, I want to be able to break them.
Why did you say you would never make a Hollywood? Why did you say you would never make a Hollywood movie while so many would dream of making one?
I don't like the system. I don't like the control. I don't like the way the people that actually operate Hollywood. Hollywood is basically a business. And the people that it's really there to support are lawyers, accountants, studio executives. The filmmaker is at the bottom of the pyramid of importance. The filmmaker, the stars are there, and you go up that way. It's an upside-down system. And because every film I do, I have total control, which is not allowed to most people, but I've been getting away with that for many years. And I was frightened that I would lose control if I'm working for a studio. But once I had Robin and Jeff Bridges, I knew if the three of us stayed together, two big stars and one second-rate director, that the studio could not interfere with us. And that's what happened. Every time I make a film, ask myself, who is going to be in the foxhole for the final battle? And if I can, if I've got, like in 12 Monkeys, Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt, as long as the three of us were connected and happy with what we were doing, the studio executives, who are very frightened, nervous people, couldn't touch us. And that's how I've always worked. I mean, I must admit, when we did, which one? No, yeah. They all blur after a while, because the experience with Hollywood is always the same. You're surrounded by these very nervous, frightened people. And it's very hard to be creative and do good work when you're surrounded by frightened people. To me, the job, you have to be surrounded by very confident, artistic people who believe in the project, not in their career. And that's the way I work. So I've been very careful to protect myself when I sell out to Hollywood.
Why do you think the majority of the population Hollywood as the standard, and why does it have such power while it is so contrived?
Hollywood is so rich. The problem now, if you make a film outside of the Hollywood system, how do you get the audience to come? Okay, if you make a film, say in the Ukraine, hopefully you get the president to be in it, and then you've got a good chance of success. It worked for him, so it'll work for you. But you need somebody who's a local star if you're making independent films in different countries. If you try to make international films, then you've got to get a star, because you won't get the money. The problem is, once you've made this wonderful movie, whatever it is you want to make, how do you get the public to come? How do you compete with Hollywood? In Hollywood, every big picture probably has a marketing budget of $80 million, 80, and no local independent distributor can compete with that. And that's one of the problems. So the majority of people just go where the largest publicity is, dragging them in. And so they go to see the Hollywood movies, more money goes into Hollywood, which makes it easier to promote Hollywood movies. Just follow the money.
And make it where it's cheaper.
Yeah, always.
The relationship between a director and an actor. I mean, the roles may vary, and different actions might be taken, but how would you describe a relationship between an actor and a director?
Well, I just work with people I like being with, to begin with. If they're big movie stars and I like being with them, that's even better. But I'm very careful about who I choose to work with, because I don't direct actors. I choose very carefully the actor I work with. I spend time, we talk, and I know before I actually hire them that mentally we're on the same track. It's what it's about. And I don't want to tell them what to do. I want them to bring their own view or attitude into the movie. But that's why I'm very careful about who I choose, because spending time with them beforehand, I know, yes, they understand what I'm trying to do, and hopefully they will make it much better than I could do if I was telling them what to do. And then when we're working, basically, it's nice to go out and drink and eat at night, so we are family. And when we're actually shooting, I'm a very good audience. I'm very close to the actors, and when they're funny, I'm out of control laughing. When they're tragic, I weep. So I become the audience for them. And actors need audiences. I'm only talking to you because I'm acting the part of Terry Gilliam right now. Without you, I am not this person right now. My wife knows who I really am. And I don't talk at home. But there's an audience there, so you're my prisoners, and I can say whatever I want. But see, now by applauding you made me feel what I said was so clever and so wonderful. You fooled me into believing myself. The trick is we're all pretending, and that's what filmmaking, acting is about. I don't know, that's why I like referring to actors as players. We are playing. We play, and we're like children. We're the lucky ones that get paid to still be children when we're old. And it's a very special thing. And I love actors because I think it's a very difficult job because you've got to be honest and you've got to be able to expose yourself, what you think and what you feel. And that, I think you've got to be either totally schizophrenic or a really solid character who can do that. And I always admire actors for that. Directors tend to be people who can't act. But directing, even that is true. When we're working, I'm acting the part of the director. So I'm not, and I have to convince myself that I'm fooling them, that they believe what I'm saying and doing. And it seems to work.
Is there anything you're working on right now?
I wish I was working on something right now, but I'm a failure, and I don't have work. I came here hoping that somebody in Ukraine would give me money. It's actually, I'm going through one of the bad periods when nothing is happening. The ideas that I want to do aren't going to happen. And I've been thinking, I've got a new script I'm working on, but the problem is, again, it's this game of pretending. And I have to pretend I know what I'm doing. I have to pretend that somebody will like what I'm doing. I have to pretend that somebody will give me money. That's a lot of pretending just before I can put a couple words on a piece of paper. So that's the game. And at the moment, I pretended to write something that I liked a month ago. And now I can't pretend to like it anymore. I'm getting very worried about it. It's this strange world of believing. And once it starts fading, then I'm often lost again. That's how it works. It ain't fun. It's not fun. Why? There's nothing to complain about. We're all alive. We're in Odessa. This is a beautiful city.
And the show must go on.
What?
And the show
goes on. No, I'm more than surprised and more than delighted than I could have ever been. I've always wanted to come to Odessa. I wanted to walk on the steps that old Sergei Eisenstein introduced me 2 years ago. And the city is better than the film. Potemkin is a wonderful film, but the city is more interesting.
Well, thank you, Terry, and I think we can open up the questions to the audience from Odessa.
Do I need to listen?
If they, yeah, potentially.
Okay.
If they speak in Ukrainian.
There's a hand there.
Бачу руки.
Hello.
Вітаю.
Что у вас... Извините, я нервничаю немного. Что за все...
Sorry, I got the wrong ones.
Start again.
Что для вас за всю карьеру режиссером было самым сложным, а что больше всего нравилось в режиссировании?
The great moments in film directing is when you're hunting for locations. That's the first part. It's wonderful because you get to see the world in the way other people don't get to. People, when they know a film is coming to their city or place, they bring you into places nobody else gets to see. It's a very exciting time. It's also exciting because as you find new locations, I'm rewriting the film in my head the whole time. It's changing. For me, the film, we start with a script, and then we start putting the pieces together. And each piece you put in, whether it's a location, whether it's an actor, whether it's a costume, it all starts changing. And you're trying to hold on to this twisting, turning
постійних
films
подворотів
trying to be
в
made.
стрічці, які намагаються
The shooting
ми створити під час
is always a very
знімання.
stressful time
Зйомка
because there's
завжди
never
сповнена
enough
стресу,
time.
тому що завжди не вистачає часу.
And you're working very long
Ми
hours, so
працюємо
it's
досить
very
довго, довгими
exhausting.
змінами, це
But
виснажує.
the great
Але
thing is
що прекрасно,
when
що
an
чудово,
actor
що
does
коли
a scene
актор
differently
грає
than
сцену
you had
трошки
been
інакше,
imagining
ніж
the
ви собі
scene. And
уявляли
that's
цю
what keeps me
сцену.
alive.
І
The
завдяки
actors
цьому я
suddenly
живий,
bring
але
a new
актор
life to
раптом
it. So,
дає
wow,
нове
we
життя.
got something
О,
new. We can do
як, у нас
something
щось нове.
different. We can shift things a little bit. Because to me, the process is always trying to build this thing that keeps moving and changing. And it's exciting. And then the best part really is editing. Because now I can fix all of my mistakes. And that's what editing does. And even then, we will move scenes around, realize the story is better if the scene that was there, we put it there. And so that's the point when the film is really becoming what it really is going to be. And then the last parts are just putting music on, which will change and make it better. But I don't really know what the film is until we get to that late stage. I know what I started to make, and I know where I want to go, but I realize the path wasn't straight. The path was like, oh, it's kind of like entering the woods. It's and you go into the woods, you know, there's the map that you had to get to where you're going, but then along the way, oh, there's a beautiful flower there. Let's go and look at that for a while. Oh, it's a deer. Come on, we'll run after the deer for a while. Eventually, we get to where we set out, but the process has changed the whole experience. That's what films are for me. And basically, the film, I always feel the film is making itself. I am not making it. The film is making it. It's like a platonic ideal that is suddenly coming down. And I'm just the hand that's doing the writing. But it becomes quite mysterious when I'm in the process of making a film. I like it because my ego vanishes. I disappear. I'm just there serving this entity, whatever it is. And it's very nice to escape your own ego. It really is, especially when you've got one that needs feeding all the time.
Dear Mr. Gilliam, I would like to say thank you for your marvelous motion pictures.
Hold on 1 second. Just have to. Where are you? No, we need to, I think, get that for translation. Yeah.
I read a book written by you and Ian Kelly, and I read that you almost worked with two Don Corleone. With the one you worked actually, and the second not happened. What went wrong? Why didn't you cast Marlon Brando as a Vulcanus in Baron Munchausen? It's very interesting because you said that the time you spent with him in Roma, with difficult filming, was maybe the best thing in that complicated production. Excuse me for my terrible English, and would you be so kind to sign this book for me after the show?
Was there a question at all in there?
What happened there?
Що ж там насправді відбулося?
I lost track of what your question was in the middle of all that. So, what do you think he said?
What happened in the process of the movie that you were making? You didn't cast Marlon Brando. You were in Rome.
Yeah, Baron Munchausen.
Am I right?
We're talking about Baron Munchausen.
Yes.
And yes, I did meet Marlon Brando when we were casting for that film. And it's one of the most extraordinary times of my life, because Brando is bigger in reality than he is on film. He's like Mount Rushmore. His head is gigantic. His forehead is massive. unbelievably extraordinary and wonderful, and he has a mind that is playing games the whole time, and you have to play games with him, otherwise you die. So, anyway, I wanted him for Vulcan in Munchausen, and the producer was the one that organized the meeting with me and Brando, and Brando and I had a good time, I think. And the producer had X amount of money for the part, and I said, here's what you do. Because a couple years before that, Brando won the Academy Award, and rather than accepting it himself, he was a big backer of the rights for the Native Americans. And an Indian squaw basically came and accepted the award for him. And I said, here's how we get Marlon Brando. We offer him $2 million, but we don't send the money to him. We send the money to the Native American people, and he will have to work for nothing. And the producer didn't do what I suggested, and so we didn't get Brando. I think we would have got him because he would have realized that I knew the games he's playing, and I know he really cared about the Native Americans. That was serious. So let's be serious. Give them the money. He's rich. He can work for free. And we would have got him, but the producer didn't do that. But we ended up with Oliver Reed, who was utterly wonderful and brilliant. So we lost one thing and we got another great thing. That's all.
Sometimes you can't take it away from the person who actually ended up playing the part. You can't take it away from the person who actually ended up playing the part.
Well, Oliver Reed surprised me because people didn't, he was always known as this very serious actor, but I had seen him in the film Tommy, based on the record, and he was utterly funny and very dangerous at the same time. And I said, that's going to be great. What was interesting, Oliver Reed at that point he was in his late 50s, so I don't know, 58 years old. Uma Thurman was 17 years old at that time. And she holds her own against Ollie. It was quite an extraordinary to take somebody that young and that inexperienced and put her opposite somebody so experienced and so dangerous. And she controlled him. It was great.
Hello, Terry. I'm here. First of all, thanks for your movies. They're unique and incredible. And the question is, how was to work with the man who killed Don Quixote for more than 25 years, and which emotions you've had when the movie was shown on the Cannes Festival? Thanks.
Yes, by the time it was actually, I think, 27 years. It doesn't matter. It was a very long time. It was, when it finally played in Cannes, it was wonderful. I still don't know if it really was real or if somebody paid the audience to stand up and applaud for 20 minutes afterwards. And I don't know whether they were applauding my perseverance and patience or applauding the movie. I hope it's about the movie, because I don't want, whatever I had to go through is not part of the story. The story was trying to make a movie and succeeding. I think it was like the movie was waiting for Jonathan Pryce to become old enough. Because having worked with in Brazil and then in Brothers Grimm, I mean, Jonathan and I are very good friends, and he wanted to play Munchausen, but for years I said, no, he's too young. He finally became 70 years old, and he was ready to play it, and he's breathtaking. And Adam Driver is an absolutely extraordinary actor. He's fantastic to work with because he's very serious, he's got an incredible sense of comic timing. And the reason I cast him was when we first met, we talked, and what had happened during, after 9/11, when the big towers went down in New York.
власне,
he
впав
signed
ввечері в
up
Нью-Йорку,
to
і він
become a
підписався,
Marine
щоб
and
стати,
go off
власне,
to fight
моряком,
the
добровольцем,
enemy.
щоб
And I
протистояти
thought,
ворогові,
that is such a
воювати. І я подумав, це десь
Quixote-esque kind of thing, a
практично
quixotic
вчинок Дон
quest.
Кіхота,
It's
Дон Кіхотський
ridiculous.
вчинок, просто
But
сміховинний.
that's what he did.
Але
And I thought,
насправді він такий, так, він і
yeah,
вчинив. Я подумав,
you're set
так,
to play this
справді,
guy.
ти можеш
Because
зіграти
the point
його,
is he has
тому
to
що
become
справа в тому,
Quixote by
що
the
він
end.
справді наприкінці стає Дон
And he's
Кіхотом,
not
наприкінці
frightened.
фільму.
And I like
Він не
working with
боїться.
actors who
А я
aren't
люблю
frightened because
працювати з
at the
акторами, які
beginning
не
of the film he's a
бояться. Бо
complete
на початку
asshole.
фільму він
By
абсолютний
the end
придурок,
he's
але
transcended
наприкінці він
to
вже
something
майже
else.
переходить в інший
And
стан,
these are,
чогось
it's, I don't know,
іншого.
I just,
Тож це
I
просто,
sit when
навіть
we're
не знаю.
shooting,
Коли ми
I'm
знімали,
paying attention to everything, but I'm
я
just
на все звертаю
marveling
увагу,
when
але
you
я
put
завжди
two
дивуюся,
actors
коли ви
together to see
об'єднуєте
what's
двох
going to
акторів
happen.
і дивитесь, що з
And
ними
if
між
they're
ними
good,
відбудеться, чи
it's
добре
always
вони
magical
спрацюють.
what
Це
happens.
завжди чари,
That's
що
what
там
happened there.
відбувається. І так відбулося там.
Террі,
Can I ask a question?
А можна я поставлю питання?
чути мене? Ага. Вітаю вас, Террі. Мене звуть Юрій. У мене є два питання до вас. Вони пов'язані між собою.
Oh, it's gonna be in, again.
Again, так? Скажіть, будь ласка, що саме для вас значить фільм «Страх та огида в Лас-Вегасі» як для режисера, як для людини?
Again.
I can hear you.
Okay, now.
Where are you? I can't see you. Raise your hand.
Юрій, ми вас не бачимо, підніміть руку, будь ласка. Але не
Чутно?
слухайте
О,
мікрофон.
супер, я себе
Окей.
теж чую.
Дуже погано
Вітаю,
чути.
Террі. Мене звуть Юрій, у мене до вас два питання. Вони пов'язані між собою. Перше, що для вас значить фільм «Страх та огида в Лас-Вегасі», як для режисера та як для людини? І друге, що для вас, як для людини, значить рішення, яке прийняв Гантер Томпсон? Дякую.
Well, since I already forgot
Власне,
the
ви
first
знаєте,
question,
оскільки я
let's
вже
do the
забув перше
second
питання, я
one.
закрию на друге.
Hunter, you mean his
щодо
life
Хантера,
choice
ви
by
маєте на увазі,
deciding
що
to
те, що
shoot
він
himself?
вирішив себе
Is
застрелити,
that
ви
what
в
we're
цьому
talking
маєте на
about?
увазі, так?
Is that what you mean
Це
by the
те, що
question?
ви хотіли запитати?
Yuri, where are you?
Юрію, скажіть, це те, що ви мали на увазі?
Yeah,
Щодо того,
you
як він
mean
завершив
the
життя?
fact that
Ви маєте на
Hunter
увазі той факт,
Thompson
що Хантер
killed
Томпсон вбив
himself?
себе? Яка є думка
That's
про
his
це?
choice.
Це його вибір.
I have nothing to
Це
say
його
about
вибір.
it.
Я нічого не
He
можу про це
reached a
сказати,
point.
тому що він
Listen,
дійшов до
several
того
things.
моменту, дивіться, кілька моментів.
Hunter Thompson was a
Гантер
huge fan of
Томпсон
Ernest
був великим
Hemingway.
шанувальником
Ernest
Ернеста
Hemingway
Хемінгуея.
did
Тому
it that
зрозуміло,
way.
Хемінгуей зробив це
And
так само.
Hunter
І
was
Хантер
a very
насправді
athletic
він був
person, and
дуже
as his body
атлетичною
became
людиною.
less
І
and
коли
less
його тіло
comfortable,
ставало
he was
все
in
менш
pain.
і
He
менш
really didn't want
таким,
to
що
end up
задовольняло
sitting in a
його, йому не
wheelchair. And
хотілося,
so
власне,
he
завершити
had,
все життя в болі і
I think it was
сидячи
a
у
very,
візку. Тож мені
a very
здається, що це
dignified
було дуже
end.
певним
He was
чином
actually quite a gentleman
шановний
because
кінець.
he
Був
shot
певним чином
himself in the
джентльменом,
kitchen.
тому що він
Now I've learned
застрелився
something
на
about
кухні.
the skills
Ви
if
знаєте,
you
я
want to shoot
дізнався
yourself,
дещо про
what you
ці
must do
навички,
to
власне, що
not
ви
make
хочете
a big
себе
mess.
застрелити, ви маєте
And
зробити
the trick is when you
мінімальний
put
безлад.
the gun in your
Питання в
mouth,
тому, коли ви
you
вставляєте,
suck the air out of the
коли ви
barrel.
вставляєте
That means a very
пістолет
neat
у
hole in your head
рота, це
without
означає,
blood
що
and
ви
brains all
вистрелюєте
over the
одразу,
kitchen.
це залишає
That's
невеличку
what
дірку
Hunter
в вашій
did.
голові,
So
не
it's a pretty
розплескуючи ваші
classy
мізки
ending.
по кухні. Тому це було дуже красиво, я б сказала, джентльменське завершення життя, його так
I think the other question, it was what is your personal meaning to fear and loathing in Las Vegas? Your personal meaning. What does it personally mean to you?
My end? You want to know how I'm going to end my life? But I will tell you. I know how I want to be buried. I've got a house on a hill in Italy. I want to dig a hole in the ground, put me in a cardboard box, and then take an oak sapling, a young oak tree, and stick it in my chest so I can grow up to be an oak tree when I'm dead. That's how I plan to die.
Okay, next question. Yes,
Гаразд,
I'm
наступне
here,
питання можна? Я ось тут.
right in front
Я
of
ось
you.
тут, уже
Yes.
фактично
My
проти
name is
вас.
Lana.
Мене звати
Hi,
Лана.
Lana.
I'm
Добрий день,
producer.
Лана.
No, I'm
Я
speaking
продюсерка.
English,
Я
so
говорю
you don't
англійською.
need that.
But
Вам
I'm
треба це.
listening in Ukrainian.
Але я
Oh,
слухаю.
it's Well done. Добрий вечір, добрий день.
Please,
Як ваша
English,
українська?
please.
All right. So I'm Lana. I'm a producer from Western Ukraine, city of Kolomea, and I would like to say thank you to you that you very honest here, saying that you sometimes face failure, and then it's okay to fail. That you are now in some stagnation period, and it's okay to be in that period because I'm sure it will bring you to something big, to some good, worthy creation of yours. And as a producer, I would like to ask you the question, for instance, if you are producing one of your idea, would you hire a female director? And if you hire a female director, who would be your first pick and top of your list, and why would you hire them? And if not, then explain what the challenges with female directors. That's my question. Thank you.
The first part of your question, the problem is I don't produce my films. I don't
If you
hire
were to
directors.
produce,
I direct. I get producers to produce my films for me. So, but if I was a producer, why wouldn't I hire a woman director? I can't think of any reason not to. It depends how talented she is. That's all I'm interested in. I am not interested in somebody's sex, their gender, their color, their nationality. None of that interests me. What interests me is how talented they are. That's all. It's hotting up down
Ви знаєте,
here.
все тут уже дуже сильно стає жарко. Гаразд, так. Ні, 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 ні. Ні, так не буде, так не буде.
Не хотів, але все рівно приверну увагу. Да, між іншим, я актор, але це просто так, не...
I just heard Ukrainian. Keep on swapping. One more time, please.
Да. Кажу, що не хотів привертати увагу лишній раз. Між іншим, я актор, да. Дуже дякую, що ви приїхали. Ви насправді надихаєте. Питання таке: от ви приїхали до Одеси, я впевнений, що ви дивилися у вікно, коли сюди їхали, дивились на людей, як українці виглядають, як вони ходять, може навіть як вони думають. Питання: якби ви знімали фільм в Україні, комедія чи трагедія?
Я думаю, що
It means both. Listen, all of my films try to be both things, both tragic and comic. So Ukraine is a perfect place, clearly. I love the fact that your president is a comedian. I think that made me think the Ukrainians are the smartest people on the planet. Because to hire a clown to run, we have a clown in Britain, Boris Johnson. He's not a comedian, he's just a clown. There's a difference.
Hi, Terry.
Sorry,
thank you
George,
for coming.
about being a clown. Where's George?
Thank you for coming, and thank you for your movies. I'm also from San Fernando, so I have a question, which is actually two questions. First, if you can go back in time machine to yourself 4 years younger, what would you say to yourself in terms of your directing career? And number two, what helped you to cope with stress during physical production? Thank you, Terry.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the first thing is going back, I would tell myself all sorts of things, and then I would be myself and not listen to myself, is what would happen. Does that make sense? I often never listened to myself, so I would be the same when I was younger. When people told me, do this or don't do that, I tended, if it was an intelligent thing, I would do hopefully the intelligent thing. But so much of one's life is listening to people who are telling you really stupid things, that's all.
Ми слухаємо людей, які говорять
I
вам
think
якісь
you've just
дурні.
got to
От і
develop
все.
a confidence
Тож
in
мені
yourself
здається,
that
треба,
what
мабуть,
you,
розвивати впевненість у собі.
how you
Впевненість у
see the
тому, що
world is
ви
honest,
бачите, як ви
it's
бачите світ, що
informed,
це чесний
and
спосіб, що це
then make
поінформований
decisions.
спосіб
The main
сприйняття
thing is
світу,
you got
тоді
to take
приймати рішення.
responsibility for
Основний
your
момент, що вам
decisions.
треба брати
That's one of the
відповідальність
things
за
that
рішення, які ви
always
приймаєте.
worries
Це
me, that so
найважливіше,
many
це те,
people
що мене
make
найбільше
choices and
хвилює.
then
Дуже
blame
багато
somebody
людей
else for it
приймають
later when
певні
it didn't work
рішення
out.
і далі
So
звинувачують когось
responsibility,
іншого
that's
за те, що
actually
щось не
the
вдалося.
center of my
Відповідальність.
film Brazil, is
Відповідальність
that
це є
the
от
character that
основою
Jonathan Pryce is
мого
playing
фільму
is
«Бразилія».
not
Персонаж,
taking
якого грає Джонатан Прайс,
responsibility
він
for
не
his
бере
part in the
відповідальність за свою
organization
участь в
that is
організації,
doing what it's
яка
doing, the
робить те,
Ministry of
що робить.
Information,
Понімаєте?
which
Ви
is,
пам'ятаєте Міністерство
out of
інформації,
control,
яке
which has
контролює,
basically
яке вийшло
become
поза
Homeland
контроль,
Security
яке
in
фактично
America these
стало
days.
ось таким
And
Міністерством
that's what the film was
держбезпеки
about,
в
was
Штатах,
about
яке
his
зараз
lack
є.
of
І, власне, мій
responsibility.
фільм багато в чому про його брак
And what was the other
відповідальності за його
question?
вчинки. А друге
What
питання,
advice
яке було,
would you give
яку би
yourself?
пораду ви би собі
Dealing with
дали?
stress.
No, no.
А, ні, про стрес було питання. Про стрес? Про стрес.
Dystopian
Про
distress?
стрес,
No,
який
coping with
безпобійний
stress
Coping
of the
with stress.
як подолати
production
стрес під
I
час
don't know.
виробництва фільмів.
You either cope with it
Я не
or
знаю,
you
а як
don't.
ви
That's all. It's
або
very
якось
simple. You
справляєтеся,
shouldn't be,
та й все. Все
if
дуже
stress is
просто.
too much of a problem
Якщо
for you,
стрес для
you
вас є
shouldn't be
велика
doing the
проблема, вам не
job,
треба братися
is
за цю
my
роботу.
feeling. Be
Принаймні,
careful
мені
what
так
you choose
здається.
to do in
Будьте
life,
обережні тим,
so
чим ви
that
вибираєте
stress is
займатися в
always
житті.
there, and you
Тому що
just
стрес
have
буде
to
завжди
believe
присутній в
enough in
житті.
what
Вам
you're
треба
doing to get
насправді
through it.
постійно вірити
I mean,
в
I
те,
had a
що ви
problem
робите, бути
just the
чесним з
other
собою,
night
бути
here
чесним до того, що
after
ви
we
робите.
finished
Ви
doing what
знаєте,
we're doing.
буквально,
Very
власне, після
tired. I got
того,
an
як ми
email
завершуємо
from
щось, я
London
прийшов
about
вечором, мені
a
прийшло
project I'm
імейл
working on,
з
which
Лондона
everything was
на
falling apart.
проєкт, над яким я працюю, що все
I dealt
насправді
with my stress till about 1 o'clock in the
розпадається,
morning
і я працював
and
зі своїм стресом
solved
десь
the
до першої
problem.
ночі
That's all.
і
I mean,
цю проблему.
stress is
Тож ви знаєте, так,
essential
правда, стрес
to
це важлива
interesting
частина
things in life,
життя.
I'm
Важлива
convinced.
частина, це цікава
If you're
частина
going
життя,
through hell,
мені так
keep
здається.
going.
Якщо ви йдете, якщо ви
Don't
рухаєтесь
go
пеклом,
into the movie
ідіть,
business if
продовжуйте
you
йти.
are worried
Дивіться,
about
якщо
stress.
вас турбує
That's
стрес,
it.
не починайте виробляти кіно.
Drinking is good too.
І, до речі, пити це теж дуже
Сказать, да? Здравствуйте, я здесь. Да. Уважаемый мистер Гиллиам. Мы здесь. Алло, мы здесь. Уважаемый мистер Гиллиам, меня зовут Дима. Извините, что не могу присутствовать на мастер-классе лично, так как сегодня работаю, в том числе и за вас. Так как, посмотрев в юности «Летающий цирк», я, как и многие присутствующие в этом зале, захотел заниматься комедией. Мы благодарим вас за это. Ваши аплодисменты. Уважаемый мистер Гиллиам, жизнь коротка, вы уже в почтенном возрасте, да и я курю и часто выпиваю, в том числе и за вас. Поэтому у нас обоих осталось не так много времени, чтобы поговорить о действительно важных вещах, узнать то, что знаете только вы. Поэтому скажите всем нам, пожалуйста, кошки какой породы лучше всего подходят для посиделок у камина? Скажите всем нам, пожалуйста, кошки какой породы лучше всего подходят для посиделок у камина?
I don't know. We were at the flea market just before coming here, and we saw these little hairless cats. They have no hair on their body. They look like they've just been born. They are wrinkled. They're the most extraordinary things I've seen. And I think that's the best kind of cat. Keep it near the fire because it'll freeze to death if it's not near the fire.
That's a good cat for the fire place.
Дійсно, для каміну, для відпочинку.
There's so many little dogs and little cats for sale. What happens when they grow a bit older and they haven't been bought?
Трошки більшими, якщо їх не купують.
What do you do with them? Do you eat them?
Ви їх їсте?
Do you flush them down
Ви
the
їх
toilet? What do you do with all those
Що ви
cute little
робите з
kitties
тими
and
милими
puppies?
кошенятами і собачками, які не
I've never
продаються на
seen so
обложці?
many, so I'm
Я
very
ніколи
worried
так багато
about them.
просто їх не бачив, тому
Because
я
I
дуже
get older and nobody
переживаю за
wants
них,
them.
тому що, ви знаєте, я сам старію,
I
мене ніхто не
mean,
хоче, тож
we don't, we stopped flushing our children
ми вже
down
ж
the
не
toilet when they
зливаємо
get older.
наших дітей в унітаз, коли вони вони старшають і нам перестають.
You have a
You're
time frame.
wondering where we're going with this, aren't you?
Питання в тому, що
You're
ви
probably
куди це
wondering
йде?
what
Нам
I'm
цікаво,
planning.
куди,
There are,
куди
the
йдеться?
doors have all been
Власне,
locked.
всі
I want to
двері
tell you about
закриті,
that.
я вам
But,
чесно скажу.
there are some very
Але
dangerous
є
men,
дуже
well armed, who will
небезпечні
be joining us
люди, які
shortly.
дуже гарно озброєні, які дуже скоро
And if you're
приєднаються.
worried
Тож,
and
якщо
nervous,
ви
your problem
Keep going.
will be solved very soon and
повірте,
quickly.
власне, все дуже швидко
Noisily,
вирішиться. І так,
Anyway,
шумно.
sorry
Але
about
гаразд,
that
в будь-якому
diversion. This
разі,
is the
тож
problem
дійсно,
making
це
movies. You
проблема
float
завжди, коли
off
ви
into other
робите,
lands,
коли ви
which
робите
should
кіно,
never be
тому що
put
ви
on
насправді
film.
завжди йдете такими шляхами, які ніколи не варто було б показувати в кіно.
Why are you
Hello?
applauding? There's nothing to be applauding for that. That was a disgraceful moment in my life.
Це був жахливий момент в моєму житті, момент сорому.
That
Another
question really
hello.
threw us off.
Yeah.
It was a piece of comedy
Це
there.
такий момент комедійний
No,
момент.
that was the tragedy.
Це було трагічно зараз з мого боку.
And it's worse now because now my hearing is falling out.
We can't hear
The
you anymore.
whole afternoon's falling apart right now. Okay, where were we?
Гаразд, давайте далі.
Hi,
We'll look more questions after that.
I'm here.
Be careful what you ask.
Inspired them.
Питання, які ви будете ставити, так?
Hello, Terry.
Добрий день, Террі.
I'm here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
О, чудово.
My name is Hannah Harnick. I'm an actress, but my question concerns script
Моє
writers.
питання стосується
So,
сценаристів.
how can independent
Яким чином
screenwriter, as
незалежний
independent
сценарист,
as you
власне,
are,
незалежний подібний до вас,
does he have a chance
чи
to
є
show you the
можливість
first page of his
показати вам, наприклад,
scenario
першу сторінку
directly, or he
сценарію,
needs,
показати
you know,
напряму,
someone else
чи
like
треба, щоб
producers or
хтось інший
studios
показав
to
це
do
вам,
that?
продюсери
Thank
чи
you.
студії, щоб хтось
Yeah,
це
I,
зробив.
well, basically, yes, I've got
Ви
an
знаєте,
agent
так,
who
в мене
protects
є
me from
агент, який
you.
мене захищає від вас.
It's, I mean,
Ви
yeah,
знаєте, так,
you can
ви
send scripts in. I
можете
mean, that's,
надіслати
I
мої
can give you a
сценарії,
place
і
to
я вам,
send.
власне,
I
дам
don't
місце, куди
tend to
можна
read other
надіслати. Я
people's
зазвичай
scripts,
не
but
читаю
sometimes I
сценарії інших
do,
людей,
and
але інколи
sometimes
читаю. І
the thing I
інколи
want
те, що
would like to be
мені
involved
хочеться,
in.
інколи навіть хочу долучитися до того, щоб щось робити
Ideas
з
are
цим
one
сценарієм.
thing,
Ідеї
and
це
writing a
одне.
little story
І
is
написати
one thing,
маленьку
but
історію це
a script
одне,
is
але
really what it's
сценарій
about.
це
Because I get a
зовсім
lot of people
інше. Тому
sending
що
me,
дуже
oh,
багато
here's a
людей
great
мені надсилають,
story,
ой, тут класна
but
історія,
that's not a
але
script.
це не сценарій
And
ще.
it's only when you see
І
a thing
лише
in
коли ви
script
вже
form
бачите вже
and you
щось у
understand what
формі
the dialogue
сценарія,
is going to be
коли ви
like,
бачите, як
and
виглядатиме
you can begin to
діалоги,
say, ah,
як
there's a
тоді вже
movie
буде,
there.
і ви побачите, що там
Because
можна зробити
I
фільм.
read a
Тоді
lot
це
of
цікаво.
books,
Через те, що я
hoping I
читаю
will
багато
find
книг,
what I would like to
сподіваючись
do
на те,
next.
що я
But I
знайду
know the
щось, що мені
process,
захочеться
having
зробити
found the
наступним
story,
проєктом.
the
Але
next process of
перший
writing the
процес
script
це знайти
can take quite a
історію,
long
другий
time.
процес написати сценарій. Я
Because
знаю,
there's
що
a,
це потребує
when
великої
you're trying to
кількості
translate
часу.
a
Тому
story
що коли ви
into a
зараз
film,
намагаєтеся
it's a different
переробити
language,
історію у
basically, and
фільм,
you've
це
got to
інша мова.
then be able to define
Це
that
процес
language as
перекладу,
you're
по
writing a
суті. І
script.
тоді це справді
I'm not
все
sure what to say.
набагато складніше вже
I'm not
написати
very good
сценарій. Я не знаю,
when I
якщо
do
це
come to
правильно пояснити,
festivals
як
and
це
people
сказати. Ви
hand me
знаєте,
scripts.
люди мені
I
на фестивалі
take
дуже
them
часто
because I
дають
want to be
сценарії, я їх
polite,
беру,
and then
тому
I
що мені
bring them
хочеться
home
бути
and
вічливим. Я
realize 5
повертаюся
years later
додому, і
I
5
still
років
haven't
по
looked
тому
at
я
it.
розумію,
That's
що я
the
навіть не
reality
читав
of
ці
my
сценарії
life.
ще. Це реальність мого життя.
Террі, в мене до тебе коротке питання. Я тут. Я можу, але це не моя робоча сторона просто. Дивіться, Террі, в мене таке до вас питання, і коротке. Як розсмішити глядача?
How do you make an audience laugh?
Як
How do
розсмішити
you make one
глядача?
person
Як
laugh? These are
розсмішити
all the same
одну
questions.
людину?
Be
Хіба це не одне
funny.
таке саме
That's what
питання?
you're
Та будьте
saying.
смішним, будьте веселими, все.
Or if you're not funny,
Якщо ви не смішний,
slip on a banana peel and fall.
послизніться на банановій кожурі, впадіть, і
No,
люди
I don't know.
сміятимуться.
I
І
mean,
насправді я не
either
знаю.
people,
Насправді
I
я не
really
знаю,
think
тому що
people are
мені
either
здається,
funny
що
or
люди,
not
вони
funny.
або смішні, або
You
не
can learn
смішні.
to be
Ви
funnier.
можете
You can
навчитися
learn
бути
to be a
смішнішим,
professional
ви
and
можете
do
навчитися
it
бути
more and
професійним
more.
коміком, робити
But
це більше,
I
більше,
think
більше часто.
very quickly
Але
you're
мені
either born
здається, що
funny or
дуже,
you
це дуже
become
просто.
funny
Ви
as
або
a way
народилися
to
смішним і
survive.
веселим, або
I mean, I
стали
think
смішним і
most
веселим
comedians I
через
know
потребу виживання.
were
І мені
either
здається, що більшість
small, fat,
коміків, яких я знала, вони
ugly
були
when
або
they were
маленькі,
young,
товсті,
and all the
некрасиві,
big,
коли були молоді,
good-looking guys would beat
або
the shit out of them.
і всі
So
оці красиві хлопці,
you learn to be funny to protect
Тож ви
yourself. You're
вчитеся
not
бути
going to
веселим
win
для того, щоб себе
in a fight.
захистити.
So
Знаєте, ви не
be
зможете
funny.
виграти
And
фізичний
that's the
бій.
history of
Тому
so
треба
many
бути ще
comedians.
веселим. І це історія
So
багатьох
if you're
великих
good
комедійних
looking
акторів.
and
Тож,
sexy,
якщо ви
you're probably not
красунчик,
going to be funny,
сексуальний,
but
і ви,
you'll
звичайно, не
have
будете дуже
fun.
веселою смішною людиною, але що ж, насолоджуйтесь.
Hello, Mr. Gilliam.
Вітаю, пане Гілліам.
Right here.
Де ви? Ось
Right
тут.
here.
О, тут я.
There. Over there.
Right here.
О, тут.
It's a big honor and a pleasure to see you here. First of all, your films mean a lot to me, especially Brazil. I wanted to ask you, when someone thinks about the style of Terry Gilliam, the usually words that come to mind are whimsical, flamboyant, etc. But, however, when one looks at your films, they are not only exuberant in the style, but they also cover some heavy and sometimes downright horrific subject matter. And I was always interested, how do you balance out during production some really harsh subjects with really whimsical nature of yours? Because for me, it's also production design and cinematography is a big part of how you balance the tones, the emotional extremes of your films, comedy and tragedy, as you mentioned earlier. So I'm just interested how you do it without making your head spin.
My theory of filmmaking has always been inspired by Mary Poppins. You need a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. Because almost every film I'm making, there are serious elements that I'm trying to say something that's serious. But I try to do it in an entertaining way, where there's comedy involved and also beauty, because I want my film to look beautiful. So if I'm talking about an ugly world, I want to make it a beautiful, ugly world, or at least artistically exciting. And that's all it is, because I don't have theories about it. I just do what feels right to me. And that's why the people I work with, I know we're on the same wavelength. We see the world in a very similar way. And it's dark and it's light. It's beautiful and it's ugly. It's tragic and it's comic. And then we just play and try to make what feels best, basically, is all it is. And the point is that I remember when we made Brazil and we started showing it. By the end of the film, half of the cinema was empty. I just used to watch as people leaving, and now the people talk about Brazil, a masterpiece, blah, blah, blah. The fact is, half the audience hated the film. And so that actually interests me, and it doesn't frighten me. I don't mind if half the audience walks out. I hope those who stay actually felt something important. I remember when we made Brazil, I remember talking to the head of publicity at the studio when it was being distributed. And she said when she saw the film, she went home that night, she took a shower, and as she was showering, she started crying and could not stop crying. The film really got to her. I know a lawyer who, having seen the film, went back to his office, closed the door, locked himself in, and didn't come out for several days. When we made Fisher King in New York, a girl who watched it walked home after the screening, and she walked to a house she hadn't lived in for 10 years. She went to a house. And that's what makes me feel the films are actually touching those people, having an effect, sometimes bad, sometimes good. And that, for me, is what's important. I think what I really love is the fact in Grand Central Station in New York, now every New Year's, they have an orchestra in there and people waltz in Grand Central Station. That is the result of Fisher King. So it's nice to know that, but I also read reviews of my films. And I realize how many bad reviews I get of people who just think, this is shit, this is bullshit. They don't like what I do. So that's fun, good. It's more interesting that way. The most frightening thing is to make a film where everybody loves it. Then you know you failed.
I actually have a question. What do you think about reviews and critic culture for artists? What does it mean?
The bad thing about critics.
Who are they?
No, most problem with critics. Now, there are some good critics, but critics are like the people who can't make films. They're the people who would love to make films, but can't make them. So that is not necessarily a happy person. So, I mean, I've read very good critics at work. I may not, critics that I don't even agree with, but I like their take on the film, the way they see the film, how they react to it. That could be great. The problem is now, what is, it seems, at least in America, I think in the UK, I don't know what it's like here, but particularly in newspapers, they want the critics to criticize or one critic to criticize all the films that week. You can't do that. It's better, there was a time when critics would only write about a film that they had very strong feelings about, either pro or con. And that becomes an interesting critic then. Because all of us who make films know that we are failing all the time. We're never making a film as good as we would like to make it. We know what's wrong with the film in so many ways, but we still put it out there because that's all we can do. It's the best we can do. So I don't mind intelligent bad reviews. I don't like dumb good reviews.
But why do we need them? Why do we need them at all? Shouldn't the audience be the critics for themselves?
No,
I mean, like this star rating, I think it's...
Oh, but they have them. It's always there. I don't. The studio system loves them.
Right.
Because that's what, I mean, years ago I was in New York, I think it was maybe promoting Brazil, and there was Roger Ebert and James Shallow. These were the two big critics in New York. They were also on television, so all across America. And they were the ones that introduced the idea of thumbs up or thumbs down. And I thought that was disgraceful. People spend years making a film, whether it's a good or a bad film. People have committed so much of their lives to do it, and these two guys can sit there on television and say, and can kill the film. And I just think that was disgraceful. Yeah.
Terry, thank you very much for your movie.
Over there.
Hello.
Yeah, and I would like to compliment your sense of humor. I really liked it. Had a fun today. Thank you. And I have a more personal question about yourself. What are your maybe long-term hobbies? What do you like to do? But please don't joke about having fun with friends and alcohol or something like that. So what do you like to do when our work?
Well, since I've been in Odessa, I've loved drinking a lot, and I've loved eating a lot. It's some of the best food I've ever eaten has been here. Some of the best things are fantastic. Thank you. We walked through the big market today. Look at it. It's just, the stuff is so beautiful there. It's just piled up everything and smells great. It's wonderful that you've not lost touch with the reality of food. Comes from the ground, boom, and it explodes in your mouth. It's beautiful. And what was the drink you were drinking last night?
The horseradish.
No, not that one. The one with the honey.
The honey and pepper liquor.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
No, it's wonderful just to have such good.
We were just tasting, not exactly, we were just tasting.
Well, that was great. What do I do in my spare time? I read a lot. Basically, I read books. And I don't watch much television. I don't even watch that many movies. It's a boring life. But it's mine.
What is there anything you're reading currently?
I'm reading a book called 137. This is a number that apparently is the number that holds everything in the universe together. It's a book about a man named Wolfgang Pauli, who in the first half of the 20th century was one of the leading quantum physicist, a great mathematician. He won the Nobel Prize. And he was having a nervous breakdown. He was having extraordinary dreams. He then connected with Carl Jung, the great psychiatrist, and they actually developed a system that was connected the world of science with mysticism and psychology. And it's a very interesting book. I haven't finished it yet. I don't know who wins.
Hi, Terry. My name is Andrew. I have already watched almost all your film in Odessa International Film Festival, and I supposed you like books and philosophy, and I want to ask you what is your favorite book, your favorite philosopher, and after all, Terry, what is the sense of life by Terry Gilliam after 30 years almost from Sense of Life by Monty Python?
Okay, let's do books. I love Catch-22. It still works, that book. I've got too many books, but that's one I particularly like. I read it every 20 or 30 years, and it always is good. And philosopher, what about Lao Tse in China? The Taoist philosopher, because Taoism, it's basically a series of paradoxes, and the idea of a paradox is central to the way I see the world. Things are never one thing. They're conflicting things, and yet it's interesting how they still, it is but isn't. I love all of that. So that's kind of the end of it. And then I'm actually writing this script where God has finally had it with humanity and is going to finally destroy humanity, because this beautiful little planet that he created, he didn't create it, but he created the garden, and people have been fucking it up too seriously for too long, and he decides to get rid of humanity. I like the idea, and the person, or the creature who talks him out of the killing everyone, saves two people, is Satan, the devil. I thought that was interesting.
Do you think that connects to climate change?
Yeah.
How the
Climate
Earth
change
is...
is the most important thing for us now. I mean, except maybe we want to get Musk to get to Mars quickly, so those of us who've got enough money can go and survive in Mars, while everybody else dies horribly. But I think that is what is really the thinking that's going on. It's very interesting. You take two of the richest men on the planet, they just can't wait to get to Mars with their friends. No, I don't understand. Everything else to me is second to climate change.
Відбувається навколо,
So,
воно вже другорядне в порівнянні зі змінами клімату. Ми стаємо серйозніше ставимося до змін клімату, але все стає значно гіршим, перш ніж ми це виправимо, якщо взагалі виправимо.
God has had enough. I say Mother Earth has had enough and the milk is drying up.
Ви як би сказали, що вже нарешті молоко висохло. Він був Єговою, Єлогімом, Буддою, ким лише не був, і матір'ю природою. Господь – це усе практично. Бог – це усе.
I am what I am.
Я є той, хто я є.
And people, I don't think people actually
Я не
invent
думаю,
God.
що люди
People
насправді
try to
придумали
explain
Бога. Вони
what
намагалися
this
пояснити, що відбувається навколо. Тож
pick one little bit.
обирали щось невеличке. Наприклад, хай буде Бог грому, так? Або це буде Одін, так? Або Яхве. Або, наприклад, Бог пустель. Далі у нас є матінка природа. Власне, все одне й те саме. Це енергія для нас. Чим би це не було, як воно працює, поняття не маю. Навіть приблизного зеленого. Але
Друзі, в нас буквально лишилося останнє запитання, і в нас вже є претендент на це останнє запитання. Я передаю мікрофон.
Спасибо. Я хочу спросить вопрос. Какой вам нравился больше всего фильм делать? И почему в многих фильмах нету детей?
No, Well, I don't have a favorite movie, and I won't choose one. But have you seen Untitled? Okay, and I keep putting children in my movies. Baron Munchausen was Sally. I can't remember her last name. The character. My films keep having children in them because I've always said it's either a child or a crazy man or a woman, doesn't matter. A crazy person or a child are the only people that see the world clearly or honestly. And that's what I like. I mean, I made Munchausen because I had two daughters and I just wanted to have one of something representing my daughter in the film. We made Tideland. It was, again, that was a book that I was asked to write a quote they could put on the cover to help sell the book. And I read it and I just fell in love with the book. I thought it was so wonderful. And so we made a film. It's very, Tideland is maybe one of my favorite films of all ones I've done, and very few people have seen it. But it is a little girl in a very extraordinary situation. And it's very beautiful. Yeah. Kids, they're the only ones that really interest me. Adults get less and less interesting the older they get, because life begins to control them too much.
You know too much.
That's the problem of being intelligent. Too much knowledge can just wear you out.
Друзі, Террі Гілліам, ваші оплески. І вам дуже велике дякую. Thank you.